Perfect life. Dark secret. This girl's got it all, but something's not right. Xian Hui was the envy of everyone. She was beautiful, top of her class, had all the hot guys chasing her, and a picture-perfect family. But no one knew the dark secret hidden behind her seemingly perfect life. And that secret was about to come out thanks to a new student. One day, a new girl named Su Yan arrived in class and walked up to Xian Hui's desk, asking if she remembered her. Xian Hui looked confused, and Su Yan seemed disappointed. She sat down and watched Xian Hui as she put her hair up, using a pen to hold it in place. This image reminded Su Yan of a past memory they shared. Xian Hui's dad was a famous lawyer who had won the Outstanding Talent Award for 4 years in a row. At school, Xian Hui was a star student, and 2 handsome boys were always protecting her. She never imagined that her perfect life would be completely turned upside down by Su Yan, the new girl. One day, while Xian Hui was reading a book, Su Yan suddenly came over and took the pen Xian Hui was using to put her hair up. When Xian Hui asked her what she was doing, Su Yan pulled out a box of matches and asked if she remembered it. Seeing the familiar box, Xian Hui's memory flashed back over 10 years. After her parents died, young Xian Hui had to live in an orphanage. She was often bullied by the other kids, until one night when Su Yan lit a match and told a scary story about how her father had killed her mother. This scared the other kids away. Su Yan was also abandoned by her parents and lived in the orphanage. The 2 girls, the same age and with similar backgrounds, quickly became best friends. Su Yan taught Xian Hui how to put her hair up with a pin and how to protect herself with matches. But those peaceful days didn't last long. One day, before Su Yan was adopted and left the orphanage, she gave Xian Hui her most prized possession, a box of matches. After that, Xian Hui was lonely again. Now the 2 girls reminisced about the past and asked about each other's current lives. Unlike Xian Hui, Su Yan said she was still living with her sisters at the orphanage. An injury from the past prevented her from being adopted. Xian Hui, on the other hand, had been adopted soon after and had become lucky, with a perfect and happy life. As she talked about the difference in their lives, Su Yan's voice was full of regret. Seeing Su Yan's sadness, Xian Hui took her hand and promised to help her find happiness again. Su Yan's gaze fell on the swan necklace on Xian Hui's backpack. She wished that Xian Hui would give it to her as a token of their renewed friendship. Although reluctant, Xian Hui finally agreed, unable to resist Su Yan's pleading eyes. That night, going home, Xian Hui couldn't stop thinking about Su Yan. She rarely lost focus like this, even during dinner. Back in her room, she wanted to call Su Yan, but stopped herself. To figure out how to deal with Su Yan, Xian Hui asked her father, the lawyer, for advice. She told him that she really wanted to be friends with Su Yan, but whenever she was around her, Xian Hui felt uncomfortable, unlike with her other friends. Su Yan seemed to carry a secret burden that Xian Hui couldn't figure out. Following her father's advice, Xian Hui decided to write a letter to Su Yan to express things she couldn't say out loud. But she still wasn't sure what to write. Unlike Xian Hui's princess-like life, Su Yan's situation wasn't good. One day, the shop Su Yan was working at suddenly closed down without paying her for the last month. To buy school supplies, she had to ask Xian Hui for money, but Xian Hui was wearing headphones and didn't hear her clearly. Su Yan thought she was being ignored and angrily demanded the money. Xian Hui was a bit scared and promised to bring Su Yan the money the next day. That night, Su Yan calculated her expenses for the new school and complained to her sisters in the dorm that the school was too expensive. Her sisters were also helpless. Remember, Su Yan had transferred to this school because she knew Xian Hui was there. Now, she felt like Xian Hui was uncomfortable around her, and their friendship seemed to have stopped at childhood. The next day, Yang Ho, one of Xian Hui's best friends and one of her admirers, approached Su Yan and gave her money, warning her not to bully Xian Hui again. He had witnessed Su Yan asking Xian Hui for money. The swan necklace that Xian Hui was wearing was a birthday gift from Yang Ho. However, this act seemed to hurt Su Yan's pride. She kicked Yang Ho to the ground, threw the money back at him, and, in front of all the students, asked Xian Hui if she looked like a beggar. After school, Su Yan was still upset about what happened. She saw Xian Hui's mother arrive to pick her up, and Yang Ho also got in the car with them. Comparing her unfortunate life to theirs, Su Yan felt so disappointed. At that moment, 2 other girls called Su Yan over, expressing envy for Xian Hui and wanting to bring Su Yan into their group to fight against this perfect girl. They even said they wanted to be friends with Su Yan, but she rejected them outright. The next day, Yang Ho met with Su Yan privately to apologize for his irrational behavior the day before. Looking at the almost perfect guy in front of her, Su Yan felt a little flustered. Similarly, after the incident with the money, Xian Hui also apologized to Su Yan and invited her to hang out. During their conversation, Su Yan learned that Xian Hui had asked Yang Ho to apologize to her. Thinking about this, Su Yan's face filled with disappointment. That afternoon, Su-yeon went to find another boy, Hyun-yu. Like Young-ho, he was one of Seon-hui's best friends and secretly liked her. But unlike Young-ho, who was straightforward, Hyun-yu always kept his feelings hidden. Su-yeon saw through his feelings and asked if he had confessed to Seon-hui. He shook his head. His family only owned a laundromat, which was completely different from Young-ho's and Seon-hui's wealthy families. So even in front of his best friend Young-ho, he had never admitted his feelings for Seon-hui. But Su-yeon encouraged him, saying that you can't choose your parents or your background. Compared to growing up in an orphanage like her, his situation was much better. That night, as Seon-hui was coming home from her after-school classes, Su-yeon called her to a secluded corner, saying she had something to tell her. Once they were alone, Su-yeon took off her wig, revealing half of her head burned. The cost of treating the burns was very expensive, which was why Su-yeon couldn't be adopted successfully. Seeing the exposed scars, Seon-hui was both shocked and scared, but Su-yeon came closer and recounted the terrifying event from the night before she was about to be adopted. Back then, young Seon-hui thought her best friend would be leaving, and she'd be alone again. She secretly lit the match that Su-yeon had given her, and the fire spread quickly, burning down the entire orphanage. Su-yeon was burned in the fire. It seemed fate had favored Seon-hui. While Su-yeon was in the hospital, she was adopted and became the lucky girl with a happy life like she has today. On the other hand, Su-yeon was abandoned by the couple who had planned to adopt her. After she was released from the hospital, a local congressman held a support day for children who had been victims of disasters and gave Su-yeon a wig. When she was alone, young Su-yeon angrily took off the wig, threw it to the ground, and stomped on it because she didn't want it. But a moment later, she picked it back up and burst into tears in despair. From that moment on, Su-yeon's life was consumed by anger and a despair she couldn't shake. She asked Seon-hui if she could imagine how miserable her life had been since then. Faced with Su-yeon's painful past, Seon-hui couldn't hold back tears and kept apologizing. But at this point, apologies meant nothing. Su-yeon put her wig back on and said that Seon-hui owed her, and she would get it back little by little. That night, thinking about Su-yeon's pain, Seon-hui tossed and turned, unable to sleep. She remembered her father's advice about writing a letter and decided to wake up and write down the things she couldn't say out loud. The next morning, Su-yeon found Seon-hui's letter under her desk. In it, Seon-hui wrote that she had no idea Su-yeon had been burned and thought they had both been adopted. Seon-hui promised to spend her whole life making up for Su-yeon and hoped they could go back to being the close friends they used to be. After reading the letter, 2 other female students went to Su-yeon and laughed, asking her what she had said to Seon-hui the previous day, curious about their past. But Su-yeon wasn't one to be bullied easily. She quickly gave the 2 girls a lesson, threatening that if they dared to bully Seon-hui again, she wouldn't let them get away with it. Su-yeon was touched by Seon-hui's heartfelt letter. After class, she gently called Seon-hui over to thank her. Seon-hui smiled gently, her hopes for their friendship blooming again. On the way home, the 2 girls who had been bullied by Su-yeon called some boys to get revenge. When Su-yeon was unable to fight back, Young-ho suddenly appeared like a savior, helping her drive the boys away. Hyun-yu was there too. After the boys ran off, a police siren sounded. Young-ho quickly grabbed Su-yeon's hand and pulled her away. Su-yeon's heart fluttered again. The 2 boys had secretly followed and protected her all the way home out of concern for her. When she was safe, Su-yeon's gaze fell on the swan necklace in his hand, the gift Young-ho had given Seon-hui. Remembering that Young-ho liked Seon-hui, Su-yeon unconsciously clenched her hand. The next day, Seon-hui and Young-ho were using their new phones to take photos. Hyun-yu wanted to take a picture with Seon-hui, but Young-ho jokingly refused. At that moment, Su-yeon arrived and offered to take a picture of the 3 of them. Then Su-yeon wanted to take a picture with Young-ho, but Seon-hui, innocently unaware of Su-yeon's feelings, also raised her hand in a V sign for the photo. That evening, Seon-hui invited Su-yeon over for dinner at her house. Looking at Seon-hui's luxurious home and her loving parents, Su-yeon's heart filled with envy. Seon-hui wanted Su-yeon to stay the night, but she refused and left quickly. Everything Seon-hui had was what Su-yeon longed for, but could never have. One day at school, Su-yeon overheard a conversation between Young-ho and Hyun-yu. Young-ho planned to confess his feelings to Seon-hui, but Hyun-yu mentioned Su-yeon, thinking that Young-ho had feelings for her. Young-ho immediately denied it, saying that the only person he liked was Seon-hui and that he didn't care what Su-yeon thought. Hearing this, Su-yeon's anger flared up. When she returned to class, she walked straight up to Seon-hui and said that if Young-ho planned to talk to her today, she shouldn't listen. Seon-hui didn't understand, but Su-yeon repeated herself loudly, threatening to cut off their friendship if Seon-hui listened to Young-ho. That afternoon after school, Young-ho did come to find Seon-hui and said he had something to talk to her about. Remembering Su Yan's warning, Seon Hui made up an excuse and rushed away. As she was almost home, she remembered that she hadn't given Su Yan her study materials. She rushed back out, but when she got there, she saw Su Yan walking into Gyung Ho's house. In Gyung Ho's living room, balloons and rose petals were scattered everywhere. It was a scene he had prepared for his confession to Seon Hui. Witnessing this, Su Yan's heart filled with envy. She told Gyung Ho not to bother with this confession because it was sure to fail. Seon Hui stood outside Gyung Ho's house, waiting, but Su Yan never came out. She was about to leave when she suddenly heard an argument from inside, and then Su Yan's wig fell to the ground. Seeing Seon Hui, Su Yan got angry, saying that Seon Hui had promised not to listen to Gyung Ho today. In a fit of rage, Su Yan pulled out a knife, believing that her unfortunate life was all Seon Hui's fault. She then lunged at Seon Hui with the knife. In that moment of danger, Gyung Ho stepped in front of Seon Hui to protect her and was stabbed. He fell to the ground. As a result, Gyung Ho collapsed, and it seemed like a tragedy had begun. After Gyung Ho's death, Seon Hui, covered in blood, rushed home. When she saw her daughter covered in blood, her mother was stunned. Seon Hui stammered, telling her mother that she had killed Gyung Ho, but she didn't mention Su Yan. Seon Hui's mother seemed oddly calm. She asked her daughter for details about the scene, such as the weapon and the location of the body. Seon Hui remembered that she had left her phone and study materials at Gyung Ho's place. She then decided to confess, but her mother wouldn't allow it. She comforted Seon Hui and told her to leave everything to her. The first thing her mother did was tell Seon Hui to take a bath and change clothes. While Seon Hui was in the bath, her mother put sleeping pills in her milk and gave it to her. After Seon Hui drank the milk, her mother said she would go to Gyung Ho's house to check if he was still alive. Seon Hui mentioned confessing again, but her mother threatened that if Seon Hui wanted to make her an accomplice, then she could go ahead. Because of her mother's words, Seon Hui gave up on confessing. That night, she fell into a deep sleep, and when she woke up, she found her phone and study materials that she had left at Gyung Ho's house neatly placed on her desk. Stepping out of her room, she saw her mother busy in the kitchen, and her father was helping. The family atmosphere was as warm as always, as if last night was just a bad dream. While Seon Hui tried to reassure herself, the TV news reported about the fire that had happened the previous night at Gyung Ho's house, claiming that his whole family of 3 had died in their sleep. Looking at the images of the fire on the news and seeing her parents act as if nothing had happened, Seon Hui suddenly realized that they might have helped her cover up Gyung Ho's death. The next day, the police began investigating the fire at Gyung Ho's house and discovered that it had started in his room. The cause could be the paint thinner belonging to his father, an artist, which may have sparked the fire. During the investigation, the police noticed Su Yan's anxiousness when she appeared in the crowd. Her fearful eyes when she met the police's gaze made them begin to suspect that it could be arson, and decided to investigate the people closest to Gyung Ho. Su Yan frantically called Seon Hui, but she didn't answer. Faced with dozens of calls from Su Yan, Seon Hui hid in her room, holding her head, consumed by fear over Gyung Ho's death. The next day, Su Yan arrived at Seon Hui's house, looking anxious. She had also noticed the fire at Gyung Ho's house and suspected Seon Hui. Seon Hui was tense and didn't respond. Su Yan reminded her that they had agreed that Seon Hui would take the blame for killing Gyung Ho. When Seon Hui remained silent, Su Yan took off her wig, revealing half of her burned head, and her eyes went wild as she grabbed Seon Hui. To Su Yan, this was what Seon Hui owed her. Not stopping there, Su Yan also demanded that Seon Hui turn herself in because she believed Seon Hui's father, a lawyer, would help her daughter resolve any trouble. But Seon Hui cried and refused, fearing that this would disappoint her mother. Seeing this, Su Yan yelled at Seon Hui, calling her thick-skinned and saying that she had taken everything from her and still wasn't satisfied. Then she threatened to call the police. As she opened the door, Seon Hui's father was already standing outside. With a polite and friendly smile that didn't match the situation, he asked Su Yan where she and his daughter were going. He even offered to take them. Su Yan quickly thanked him and left hastily. Passing by the police station, Su Yan hesitated. She took the swan necklace from her pocket, and her memory flashed back to the day of the incident. That day, when Su Yan went to Gyung Ho's house, he was preparing a surprise party to confess his feelings to Seon Hui, and had asked Su Yan to text Seon Hui, reminding her to come over after her after school classes. Su Yan's heart was filled with envy. She lied, saying that Seon Hui didn't like Gyung Ho, and that the swan necklace was something Seon Hui didn't want, so she had given it to her. But Gyung Ho didn't believe it. He believed that Seon Hui wasn't that kind of person, and asked Su Yan to return the necklace. Su Yan refused, and Gyung Ho started to approach her, demanding that she give it back. He even blamed her for bullying Seon Hui. Feeling helpless in her situation, Su Yan cried and ruined the party that Gyung Ho had worked so hard to prepare. Gyung Ho tried to stop her, But during the argument, Su Yan's wig fell off, revealing the secret she had always hidden. Her pride was deeply hurt. In a fit of anger, she blamed Sion Hui, saying that she had made her life so miserable. Remembering the events of that night and looking at the swan necklace in her hand, Su Yan temporarily put aside her plans to report to the police. Just then, a black car suddenly stopped behind her. The person in the car saw her and Su Yan felt reassured enough to get in. That night, waking up in the car, she was suddenly attacked by the person sitting beside her, who used a hammer and blood gushed out. While the attacker searched the trunk, Su Yan ran for her life. Meanwhile, Sion Hui asked her mother about the fire at Gyung Ho's house. The night before, when she had gone to Gyung Ho's house, she had left her phone and study materials there, but when she woke up, everything was neatly placed on her desk in her room. Facing her daughter's question, Sion Hui's mother, with a mysterious expression, insisted that she didn't know anything about what happened at Gyung Ho's house. Remembering her happy moments with Gyung Ho, Sion Hui felt both heartbroken and guilty. She searched for news about the fire online, and couldn't help crying when she thought about how good things would have been if nothing had happened. The next day, Hyun Yu went to find Sion Hui to attend Gyung Ho's funeral together. Seeing his portrait, Sion Hui felt very uneasy, to the point that she couldn't stand and collapsed to the ground. Hyun Yu took care of her, and just then, Sion Hui's father, a lawyer, appeared. He was worried about his daughter. He thanked Hyun Yu and took her home by car. On the way, her father comforted her, saying that time would heal all wounds, and he promised to help her through this difficult time with her mother. After her father comforted her, Sion Hui felt calmer. However, when they arrived home, she saw 2 police officers waiting at the door. Her father told her to stay in the car, while he went down to deal with them. Sion Hui tried to avoid the police officer's gaze, but while sitting in the car, she discovered the swan necklace she had given to Su Yan. Looking at her father, who was still as kind as always, Sion Hui suddenly felt uneasy. He invited the police officers inside, and they began to question her about Gyung Ho. Sion Hui just said that she didn't know anything, and when the police mentioned that they couldn't reach Su Yan, Sion Hui nervously looked at her father. Her hands unconsciously intertwined as she tried to hide her anxiety. At the same time, Sion Hui instinctively chose to lie and didn't mention that Su Yan had been to her house before disappearing. After the police left, her father praised Sion Hui for keeping calm and not revealing that Su Yan had been to their house, saying she had done a great job. He put his hand on her shoulder, still gentle as always, and said that she didn't need to worry because whatever happened, he would always be on her side. Sion Hui felt afraid, shrank back and ran to her room. Watching his daughters retreating back, the father's expression seemed to become serious and unpredictable. Inside her room, Sion Hui opened her phone and saw numerous messages she had sent Su Yan, but they still remained unanswered. She called her, but the call wouldn't connect. Looking at the warm family picture on her desk, Sion Hui had a bad feeling. To prevent something bad from happening, she quickly contacted Hyun Yu and asked for Su Yan's address. Arriving at the address, she encountered Su Yan's roommate, who told her that Su Yan hadn't been home for days. That night, returning home, Sion Hui remembered the last time Su Yan came to her house, and since then, she had completely lost contact with her. Adding to the fact that she had seen the swan necklace in her father's car, Sion Hui began to fear that her worries were coming true. Just then, a man called her over. He said he was related to Sion Hui's father, and that he had known her since she was a child. Before leaving, the mysterious man leaned close to Sion Hui's ear and told her to be careful of her parents. Sion Hui was shocked, while her father stood on the upper floor, watching the man with a tense expression. Meanwhile, Officer Shin, who had been to Sion Hui's house, still believed that Gyung Ho's death was no ordinary accident. Although his superiors had reprimanded him for acting on his intuition when the autopsy report arrived, confirming that Gyung Ho's death wasn't from the fire, but from a stab wound from a knife, the officer was even more certain that the fire had been intentionally started by the killer. 10 years ago, a girl named Sion Hui kept a diary about being bullied by her classmate. One night, while Sion Hui slept, her parents secretly read her diary. The next day, the bully mysteriously died in an accident. It wasn't until recently that Sion Hui started to realize how creepy her parents actually were. Last night, a mysterious man visited Sion Hui, claiming to be a family relative, and warned her to be careful about her parents. After the man left, Sion Hui's mother questioned her about what he said. Sion Hui asked if the man was really family, but her mother simply said he used to visit when Sion Hui was little. However, Sion Hui had no memory of this, and her mother seemed strangely relieved by the answer. Back in her room, Sion Hui couldn't sleep. The mysterious man had not only warned her about her parents, but also asked about a specific room in the house. This gave Sion Hui an uneasy feeling, so she crept toward the locked room, the only one in the house her parents never allowed her to enter. She listened carefully, but then heard a noise from the room next door. Sion Hui rushed to the stairs and saw her parents standing there, with unsettling smiles on their faces. The next day at school, Hyeon Yu noticed Seon Hwai was troubled and offered his support. Seon Hwai asked for his help, and together they asked their teacher to leave early. After school, Seon Hwai raced home while her parents were out, and had Hyeon Yu watch the door while she searched the house. Finally, she found a set of keys in the storage room, and made her way to the forbidden room. She remembered that as a child she'd once wanted to enter, but her father, with an unusual severity in his voice, had told her never to go in, no matter what. Thinking back to her father's strange reaction, combined with the mysterious man's words, Seon Hui determined to open the door. Unfortunately, none of the keys fit. With her parents about to return, Seon Hui was desperate. She told Hyeon Yu to get a ladder, and then climbed up to try to open the room's window. Just then, her father's car pulled up. Panicking, Seon Hwai had Hyeon Yu take down the ladder and pull her father away. To help the girl he likes, Hyeon Yu swallowed his pride and danced awkwardly in front of Seon Hui's father. A few minutes later, Seon Hui's mother also came home. Hyeon Yu secretly saw Seon Hui successfully open the window and sneak inside. Only then, with Seon Hui's parents watching him with confusion, did Hyeon Yu stop his clumsy dance. Slipping into the forbidden room, Seon Hui found everything well preserved. A toy car sat on a bedside table, and a photograph lay on the desk. The moment she saw the picture, Seon Hui was utterly stunned. Meanwhile, after Hyeon Yu went home, Seon Hui's parents rushed into the house. Seeing their daughter wasn't in her room, Seon Hui's mother gestured to her father, who understood. He pulled a key from his pocket and went towards the forbidden room. Just as he was about to open the door, Seon Hui, wrapped in a robe, emerged from the bathroom. In front of her parents, she pretended she'd just showered and acted like nothing was wrong. After Seon Hui went back to her room, her mother checked the bathroom, but found no clothes in the laundry basket. In her own room, Seon Hui removed her robe and pulled out the photograph she'd hidden under her clothes. She believed this photo held the key to unraveling all the secrets. After hiding the photo carefully, Seon Hui went to the kitchen and asked her mother why she had adopted her. Her mother, rarely prone to anger, seemed to be upset by the question, prompting Seon Hui to stop and say nothing more. That night, Seon Hui's mother told her father about her daughter's question, suggesting Seon Hui was getting close to the truth. Her father, in an ominous tone, told her mother that no matter what happened, they had to keep everything hidden and put a certain plan into action. The next day after school, Seon Hui left in a hurry, and a worried Hyeon Yu followed her. They arrived at a grand mansion, and a butler led them into the hall. It was a luxurious mansion that looked like a palace. Seon Hui explained to Hyeon Yu that this was her grandmother's house. A moment later, the butler wheeled out an elderly woman, the grandmother who was not related to Seon Hui by blood. She didn't welcome her niece's visit, but Seon Hui, undeterred, took out the photo she'd found in the forbidden room. The picture showed Seon Hui's parents, her grandmother, and a teenage boy. Seon Hui wanted her grandmother to reveal the boy's identity, but the woman shrieked in fury, claiming that even if Seon Hui knew, she could never truly become a part of the family. Seon Hui continued to ask questions, but her grandmother only grew angrier. She smashed a vase on the table in front of Seon Hui and yelled at her never to come back. Hyeon Yu quickly pulled Seon Hui out of the mansion, helping her bandage the cut from the broken vase. During their conversation, Hyeon Yu suddenly brought up Soo Yeon, realizing that all the chaos started after Soo Yeon transferred to their school. He sensed that Seon Hui knew something but wasn't willing to share it with him. Seeing his friend's sadness, Seon Hui confided in him, saying that it wasn't a matter of not trusting Hyeon Yu, but that she still didn't fully understand what was going on herself. Hyeon Yu comforted her, assuring her that if she ever needed to go somewhere or had something to talk about, she could always come to him. He promised to be her most reliable support, no matter what, wherever, whenever. Seon Hui felt encouraged, and her sadness slowly faded. Under the setting sun, Hyeon Yu carried Seon Hui home, step by step. In a gentle voice, he told her that in Native American language, friend means one who endures sorrow for me. Then, Hyeon Yu pulled out a gummy candy from his pocket and gave it to Seon Hui. He had saved it for days just for her. Back home, Seon Hui wrote about her day in her diary. It had been a terrible day, but Hyeon Yu's words were like a comforting balm. She felt even more grateful for her precious friend. While writing, Seon Hui remembered a birthday from her childhood. Her parents had given her a diary as a birthday gift, and told her to write down everything that happened each day. Shortly after, her parents noticed that Seon Hui seemed unhappy after coming home from school. They secretly read her diary in the middle of the night, while she slept. Seon Hui had written that a classmate had been spreading rumors that she wasn't her parents' biological child. She couldn't stand hearing bad things about her parents, so she had a fight with the classmate and refused to go to school afterwards. After reading the diary, her parents looked at her with a strange expression. The next day, Seon Hui learned that the classmate she had fought with was dead. Seon Hui, after writing in her diary, went out with Hyeon Yu to relax. While she was gone, Seon Hui's father snuck into her room and checked her computer. He found her browsing history included websites about changing family relationships. Then he cleverly took the keys Seon-hui had hidden in a small box, opened the storage closet, and secretly took her diary. This time, Seon-hui's diary entries detailed her curiosity about the mysterious man's identity, her recent sadness, and Hyun-yu's comforting presence. After reading it, her father carefully placed the diary and keys back where they belonged. Meanwhile, Seon-hui thanked Hyun-yu, saying that she wouldn't know how to face her life without him. As they talked, Officer Shin was convinced that Seon-hui was at the heart of two cases, Soo-yeon's disappearance and another murder. Unfortunately, his superior wouldn't allow him to follow and monitor Seon-hui, claiming that the murder was ruled an accident. After thanking Hyun-yu, Seon-hui revealed to him about Soo-yeon accidentally killing someone at the river. Hyun-yu was confused and suspected Soo-yeon might have also started the fire. He couldn't understand why Seon-hui didn't report it to the police. Why hadn't she? Seon-hui insisted that Soo-yeon wasn't responsible for the fire. To protect her parents, Seon-hui couldn't bring herself to tell Hyun-yu about her suspicions about them. Hyun-yu, in his simple thinking, believed Seon-hui couldn't handle this alone and urged her to report to the police. Seon-hui then received a text message from an unknown number, likely from Soo-yeon. Soo-yeon said she was at the school gate and told Seon-hui to come out and meet her. Seon-hui rushed out of class and to the gate, but after looking around, she couldn't find Soo-yeon. Across the street, a figure that looked a lot like Soo-yeon passed by. Seon-hui ran across the street, but a black truck suddenly sped towards her. In that dangerous moment, Hyun-yu pushed Seon-hui out of the way, but he was lightly hit by the truck. At that moment, the driver adjusted the rearview mirror to see Seon-hui and Hyun-yu being hit. At the same time, Seon-hui seemed to recall a scene from her childhood, where she fell into the sea, and her father, with a cold expression, stood on the shore. Luckily, neither Seon-hui nor Hyun-yu were seriously injured. After they recovered, Hyun-yu told Seon-hui how much he missed their happy days together. But he knew those happy times were gone, and couldn't be repeated. So he vowed to protect Seon-hui, to not lose his last friend. However, Hyun-yu also expressed his suspicion. He pointed out that when a car is about to hit someone, the driver usually hits the brakes. But the black truck kept going, as if it intentionally wanted to hit Seon-hui. Hyun-yu asked Seon-hui if they should report it to the police. She initially agreed, but then remembered her parents. Hyun-yu asked for a reason, but before Seon-hui could answer, her parents arrived at the hospital. Seon-hui's mother was very worried and concerned, while Hyun-yu noticed that Seon-hui's father stood next to her with clenched fists and a tense expression. That evening, at the law firm, Seon-hui's father's partner unexpectedly said that he had done a great job. Hearing this, Seon-hui's father's eyes looked slightly distracted, as if he wasn't happy with the news of his victory for the day. His partner noticed that he had something on his mind and advised him not to keep things bottled up. Seon-hui's father agreed, but after his partner left, his face became even more serious. The next day, Seon-hui's whole family sat around the dinner table, a tense atmosphere hanging in the air. 2 police officers arrived. They were aware of the truck incident and suspected Seon-hui's family's involvement. In response to the police's suspicion, Seon-hui's father, unnaturally, put his arm around his daughter, implying that what happened yesterday was just an accident. However, the police discovered that Seon-hui's father had rented a black truck from a rental company. Seon-hui's father admitted that he was the one who rented the truck. Hearing this, Seon-hui was shocked and stared at her father. The police wanted to ask more, but Seon-hui's father invited them to his office for a detailed conversation. The police understood and left, but they suspected Seon-hui's father was trying to buy time and hide something. After the police left, Seon-hui's father received a call from her mother, who said that Seon-hui had gone to see her grandmother with the picture. After the call, he opened the door to the room he'd forbidden Seon-hui to enter and discovered that the window had been opened. The police arrived at the law firm according to their appointment and discovered that Seon-hui's father had not left the office before she got injured and hospitalized. It became clear that the driver of the black truck wasn't Seon-hui's father. Thinking about her father renting the truck, the fires, and Soo-yeon's unexplained disappearance, Seon-hui started to suspect that maybe her father was planning to kill her. After a struggle, she decided to confront her father. To her surprise, when she opened her door, her father was standing outside, his face stern. He asked her where she hid the picture. Before Seon-hui could answer, he started smashing things in her room. Terrified, she told him that the picture was in her backpack. After getting the photo, her asked her father about the teenage boy in it. Seon-hui wanted to know how many secrets her parents had hidden from her. She even confessed that she was scared of them now. To her surprise, her father turned to her and said that he was the one who was afraid of her. He started to say more, but her mother stopped him and told Seon-hui never to go into that room again. Thinking about her father's attitude, Seon-hui hesitantly called the mysterious man. During their conversation, she felt a little better because of his jokes. She asked him about the teenage boy in the photo. The man then pulled out a police badge and revealed that he wasn't a relative of Xian Hui's family, but a police officer investigating her parents. He said that Xian Hui's father was hiding a dark secret, and that he used to be a prosecutor before becoming a lawyer. Xian Hui was shocked to learn this. According to the officer, many years ago, there was a fire and kidnapping that shocked the public. Xian Hui's parents' biological son had died in that fire. That year, the police officer suspected Xian Hui's father, but eventually, an unrelated person was arrested, and the investigation ended abruptly. All related articles were also deleted. The officer believed that Xian Hui's father had used his power to influence the investigation. He also warned that Xian Hui, the adopted child in this family, was also in danger. He wanted to protect her and didn't want history to repeat itself. He urged Xian Hui not to tell anyone about their meeting. He promised to arrest Xian Hui's father himself. When Xian Hui returned home, her father presented her with documents about studying abroad and told her to get ready to go overseas soon. Her mother said that everything her father did was for her own good. After her father left, her mother told Xian Hui the story about the teenage boy in the photo. As Xian Hui had guessed, the boy in the photo was her parents' biological son. According to her mother, before adopting Xian Hui, their son had died in a fire. It was a very painful memory for them, so they couldn't tell her. Her mother hugged Xian Hui, hoping she would believe them. To protect Xian Hui, her parents would do anything. Taking advantage of the situation, Xian Hui asked her mother what she had done at Young Ho's house that day. Her mother frankly admitted that when she arrived at Young Ho's house, he was still alive. She intended to call an ambulance, but Young Ho stopped her. He said he wasn't in any life-threatening danger and was very protective of Xian Hui, insisting that she hadn't done anything wrong. When Young Ho's parents were about to return home, Xian Hui's mother took her daughter's phone and towel and left through the back door. She didn't know how Young Ho's house caught fire. Thinking about her parents' words and the officer's story, Xian Hui didn't know who to believe. To confirm the truth, Xian Hui searched online and discovered that, as the officer said, all news related to the fire and kidnapping years ago had been deleted. From then on, Xian Hui began to believe the officer and suspected that her family was hiding an unspeakable secret. Meanwhile, Xian Hui's parents sat in the living room, looking mysterious as they watched a TV program about food allergies, especially precautions for people with peanut allergies. At the same time, the officer called Xian Hui, expressing his concern and telling her to contact him immediately if anything happened. That night, a fisherman discovered a human head floating in the river. The police quickly arrived at the scene and found a student ID card nearby with Su Yan's name on it. News of Su Yan's disappearance was published in the newspaper. When Xian Hui's father saw the news, his expression became serious and ominous. One night, Xian Hui was researching online when she discovered that all the websites related to the case had been deleted. As she was searching, her mother suddenly walked into the room. Xian Hui quickly jumped onto the bed and pretended to hear a strange noise. While her mother went towards the window, Xian Hui quickly closed the website on her computer, not knowing that her mother had seen everything through the window. However, her mother pretended not to know anything when she stood in front of her daughter. At that time, Han Yu came to visit, looking very worried about Xian Hui, but her mother refused the meeting, saying that Xian Hui was not feeling well. Hearing the noise, Xian Hui texted Han Yu, telling him to go home first and that she would contact him when she could go out. Han Yu, in a heavy mood, accidentally went to the police station and met Officer Shin. He said that he felt uneasy and didn't trust Xian Hui's parents. He was not at ease because he couldn't meet Xian Hui. Later, Xian Hui went into the kitchen and found a jar of peanut butter in the bag of groceries that her mother had just bought. She was very surprised because she had a severe peanut allergy, and her parents knew that. While trying to understand what was happening, Xian Hui heard her parents talking in the room, and her mother excitedly said that they needed to quickly kill someone before they were discovered. Fearful, Xian Hui immediately hid in her room. The peanut butter and her mother's words made Xian Hui think of a terrifying truth. Her parents might want to use peanut butter to kill her. Feeling increasingly anxious, Xian Hui received a message from Han Yu, saying that he had reported Su Yan's message to Xian Hui to the police. The police said that Su Yan's phone was always turned off, and the last time it was turned on was on the 10th. This made Han Yu suspect that the person who texted Xian Hui that day was not the real Su Yan. After reading the message, Xian Hui was even more confused and wondered who the imposter was. Just then, Xian Hui's mother brought a bowl of porridge to her room, constantly saying, "Just eat it, honey." To Xian Hui, these words were like a death sentence from her mother, forcing her to leave this world. Looking at her mother's smiling face, she felt terrified and knocked over the spoon of porridge, quickly running away from home. On her way, Xian Hui couldn't shake the growing fear that her parents were trying to kill her. It was starting to rain, and she shivered, finding refuge in a dark alley. She called Han Yu, her voice trembling as she told him she had run away. Hearing the desperation in his daughter's voice, Han Yu rushed out to find her. After the call, Xian Hui huddled in a corner, tears streaming down her face. A shadowy figure darted past, making her scream and run towards a busy intersection. As she waited for the light, she felt eyes burning into her back. Before she could turn, she was shoved into the street, the screech of brakes followed by a bone-jarring impact. Meanwhile, Hyun-Yu saw an ambulance outside a convenience store. A heavy dread settled in his gut, and he sprinted out. But all he saw was a figure in a black raincoat getting into a taxi. He chased after the vehicle, but a figure in black blocked his path. Seon-Hui's father. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice calm. Hyun-Yu, still fixated on the taxi, remained silent. The father then received a phone call, his expression turning grim. Outside the hospital room, Seon-Hui's mother and Hyun-Yu anxiously paced. A dark figure crept towards the bed, and in her feverish haze, Seon-Hui saw her mother, her eyes wild. Her mother was choking her, shaking her violently, screaming. Seon-Hui's mother rushed into the room, cradling her daughter. Hyun-Yu frantically called for a doctor as Seon-Hui started to convulse. With medical attention, she slowly calmed down. When she regained consciousness, Seon-Hui called out to Hyun-Yu, her voice weak. "They're trying to kill me." The words hung in the air, heard by her parents who were now in the room. Just then, Officer Shin arrived, urging Seon-Hui to share more details, but she slipped back into unconsciousness. In her fevered dreams, Seon-Hui found herself a child again, struggling to light a match. Then, Soo-Yeon appeared, her voice cold and accusing. "All the clues point to one conclusion. Your parents want you dead," she said, snatching the match from Seon-Hui's hand. She lit it, tossing it into a roaring fire behind them, then ripped off her wig, revealing half her face scarred and burned. "You caused this, Seon-Hui," she whispered, her voice a chilling reminder of the shared tragedy. The flames consumed Soo-Yeon, her scream echoing in Seon-Hui's mind as she woke with a gasp. Her mother sat beside her, but Seon-Hui knew she couldn't trust anyone. When her mother left to call a doctor, Seon-Hui grabbed her phone and contacted Detective Hyun-Min, the one who had warned her about her family. He agreed to help. What Seon-Hui didn't know was that the police were reviewing dashcam footage from the night Soo-Yeon vanished. Meanwhile, Hyun-Yu was on the phone, calling someone. Soo-Yeon. He had recognized the face of the figure in the black raincoat. It was Soo-Yeon, Seon-Hui's best friend. Hours earlier, Officer Shin had shown Seon-Hui's father the dashcam footage. It showed the accident wasn't an accident at all, but a deliberate push. Her father, however, remained unfazed, dismissing it as nothing out of the ordinary. Officer Shin, piecing together the events from the fire at Young-Ho's house to Soo-Yeon's disappearance, began to suspect Seon-Hui's father. Unable to get a search warrant, Officer Shin enlisted the help of a notorious criminal. He orchestrated a staged accident, crashing into Seon-Hui's father's car. While the father was getting his car repaired, the investigation team secretly checked the car and found a new memory card in the dashcam, along with traces of blood. Days later, Seon-Hui was discharged from the hospital. Her father confronted her about her claims that her parents wanted to kill her. Was she hiding something? Seon-Hui remained silent, her gaze unreadable. The drive home was filled with an unbearable tension, the facade of a happy family shattered beyond repair. As they arrived home, the police burst in, arresting Seon-Hui's father for kidnapping and murder. Seon-Hui collapsed to the floor, watching as her father was led away in handcuffs. Last night, Seon-Hui's father was arrested for the suspected murder of Soo-Yeon. DNA evidence, released early this morning, confirmed that the blood in his car belonged to Soo-Yeon. During his interrogation, Seon-Hui's father, a renowned lawyer, calmly maintained his innocence. He claimed his car was stolen, citing legal loopholes and demanding the police find Soo-Yeon's body before making any accusations. Detective Shin, however, was not convinced. Meanwhile, Seon-Hui's mother arrived at the police station with an alibi for her husband. What they didn't know was that a dramatic turn of events was unfolding elsewhere. Hyun-Yu, who was at the scene of Seon-Hui's accident the previous day, had a chilling encounter. He believed Soo-Yeon pushed Seon-Hui into the accident to protect her and had arranged a meeting in an alleyway. He saw someone lurking in the shadows, but they disappeared before he could identify them. Detective Lee, a dedicated officer and colleague of Shin, arrived and discovered Hyun-Yu's message to Soo-Yeon. He questioned Hyun-Yu about the mysterious figure, suspecting that Soo-Yeon might be in danger. After parting ways, Hyun-Yu returned to the alley and was suddenly attacked from the shadows. He was stabbed and severely injured. Lee, alerted by the commotion, rushed to his aid and called for an ambulance. He contacted Detective Shin, who immediately rushed to the hospital. Before falling unconscious, Hyun-Yu whispered to Lee that Soo-Yeon had stabbed him. Soo-Yeon was alive. This meant the murder charges against Seon-Hui's father were now completely off the table. Shin ordered Lee to track down Soo-Yeon, while he visited Hyun-Yu in the hospital. Meanwhile, Seon-Hui, unaware of the unfolding chaos, grew increasingly suspicious of her parents. She feared they were planning to kill her. Suddenly, a crash. Xianhui heard a loud bang and found her living room window shattered. A similar crash echoed from her bedroom. Terrified, she ran towards the noise and found her bedroom window smashed. As she fled the room in panic, she accidentally stepped on a shard of broken glass. A figure appeared at the end of the hallway. Xianhui stumbled, fleeing her home and into the yard, fueled by instinct. But then, Su Yan's voice echoed behind her. Xianhui turned to see her best friend chasing after her, a blood-stained knife in her hand. Their eyes met, and Su Yan's gaze fell upon the weapon. A chilling smile spread across her face as she calmly told Xianhui she had just seen Han Yu. She then tossed the knife to the ground, declaring that she wouldn't make Xianhui's death easy. Xianhui stood frozen, overwhelmed. Su Yan, however, picked up a nearby shovel and slammed it into the ground. When Xianhui frantically asked about Han Yu, Su Yan's anger boiled over. She swung the shovel, striking Xianhui. When Xianhui regained consciousness, she found herself bound in her bedroom. Su Yan, her face partially obscured by burns, held a can of gasoline and began to douse the room. This was her turn to endure the pain. Xianhui's eyes widened in terror as she realized Su Yan's intentions. With the room drenched in gasoline, Su Yan couldn't hold back her anger any longer. She unleashed a torrent of accusations. Xianhui had promised to confess to killing Yang Ho at the police station, but never did. Su Yan said she understood, but she couldn't forgive Xianhui for trying to kill her as well. Xianhui tried to explain, but Su Yan wouldn't listen. She slapped her friend and broke down in tears, blaming Xianhui for ruining her life. Xianhui pleaded with Su Yan to calm down, hoping they could talk things out. But Su Yan felt utterly hopeless. She confessed to killing Yang Ho, and even if Xianhui tried to explain, it wouldn't change the fact that her life was ruined beyond repair. Xianhui insisted that Yang Ho was still alive after they left the scene that day, and her mother had witnessed it. Su Yan, however, remained unconvinced. She accused Xianhui's mother of lying or destroying evidence to protect her daughter. Xianhui desperately tried to defend her mother, but Su Yan was consumed by rage. She screamed and shoved Xianhui to the ground, convinced that her best friend had orchestrated her parents' plot against her. As proof, she revealed a familiar piece of jewelry, a swan necklace she had found in Xianhui's room. Xianhui was speechless. Just then, Han Min, who had helped Xianhui before, arrived at her house. After yesterday's car accident, Xianhui sensed something was wrong with her parents and feared for her life. She had called Han Min for help. Now, finding the door unanswered, Han Min climbed over the wall, spotted the shattered living room window, and made his way towards Xianhui's bedroom. Xianhui saw Han Min and felt a surge of hope, but Su Yan's anger intensified. She grabbed the knife and threatened to stab Xianhui if he took a step closer. Han Min, however, saw the gasoline-soaked floor. Instead of trying to rescue Xianhui, he leaned against the window and lit a cigarette. Realizing the danger, Su Yan screamed at him to put it out. But Han Min ignored her pleas and casually tossed the burning cigarette onto the floor. Instantly, the gasoline ignited into a massive inferno. The flames grew rapidly, and Han Min, the man Xianhui trusted most, broke into a wicked smile. As Su Yan helped Xianhui escape the fire, Han Min snatched the knife from her hand and threatened her, forcing her back into the flames. Xianhui finally realized the man before her was not a police officer. Han Min approached Su Yan, holding the knife, his eyes cold and calculating. He had planned this out meticulously. Su Yan's keen eyes recognized his deception. She knew he wasn't a police officer. Han Min, prepared for this situation, had a plan. He would tell the police that Su Yan was the arsonist. He'd claim that she had killed Yang Ho and set the fire to eliminate the witness, Xianhui. However, Su Yan had inadvertently become a victim of her own plan and perished in the flames. Xianhui lunged forward to shield Su Yan from Han Min, urging her friend to run. Han Min shoved Xianhui aside and grabbed Su Yan, attempting to push her back into the raging fire. As they struggled, Detective Lee arrived. He drew his gun, aiming at Han Min. Han Min remained calm and continued his charade. He declared he was a police officer and had been trying to subdue Su Yan, who was holding a knife. He reminded Lee that the fire was spreading and Xianhui was in danger. Lee, seeing the inferno and believing Han Min's story, rushed toward Xianhui. Just as Detective Lee turned away, Han Min attacked from behind, disarming him and snatching the gun. Su Yan seized the opportunity to flee, but Han Min quickly aimed the weapon at her, demanding she return to him and retrieve her knife. Su Yan had no choice but to comply, but as she reached for the weapon, Han Min betrayed her. He fired a shot as Su Yan grabbed the knife, intending to frame her for the attack on the police officer. Meanwhile, Xianhui's father had been released, and the police informed him about Hyeon Yu's stabbing. At the hospital, Detective Shin told Seon Hui's father that Hyeon Yu, before falling unconscious, had uttered a chilling final statement. When they couldn't reach Seon Hui on her phone, her parents realized something was terribly wrong and rushed back home. It was too late. Their house was engulfed in flames. Rescue workers pulled Detective Lee out of the inferno, but there was no sign of Seon Hui or Soo Yan. Faced with the raging fire, Seon Hui's parents were consumed by despair, weeping for the loss of their daughter. They couldn't bear to endure the pain of losing a child again. As for Soo Yan, her feelings for Seon Hui were a complex mix of love and hate. She had a kind heart, despite the trauma of the fire that had taken everything from her. Growing up, she had always tried to be optimistic and positive. One day, she asked her sister from the orphanage if a simple person like her could have dreams. Her sister replied that everyone deserved to dream, even if they didn't have the fortune to achieve them. They should live life to the fullest, without ever giving up. Her sister's words had taken root in Soo Yan's heart. Before transferring schools, Soo Yan had randomly bumped into Seon Hui on the street. Even though years had passed, she instantly recognized her as her closest friend from the orphanage. Driven by instinct, Soo Yan followed Seon Hui and witnessed her happily walking with Hyeon Yu, a man Soo Yan had never met. Seon Hui had been picked up by her father, and Soo Yan no longer existed in her life. But Soo Yan had never forgotten her friend. Soo Yan began researching Seon Hui's school and decided to transfer there, embarking on a new dream. Although she still harbored resentment over Seon Hui's unintentional role in the orphanage fire, Soo Yan cherished the memories of her friend's laughter, kindness, and even her silly ways during their rock-paper-scissors games. Back then, Soo Yan's only desire was to be with Kyung Ho, the boy she loved. She had secretly sworn that if Seon Hui gave Kyung Ho to her, she would forgive her past mistakes. But reality had other plans. When she saw Hyeon Min point the gun at her, fear of death consumed Soo Yan. Years ago, as a young child, she had tried to escape from human traffickers. She had accidentally caused one of them to fall to his death during a struggle. That experience had taught her the fragility of life. But sadly, life didn't become easier just because she had learned that lesson. Hours earlier, the mysterious Hyeon Min had set Seon Hui's house on fire, and then abducted both her and Soo Yan. The police found no bodies at the scene and assumed Seon Hui was still alive. They suspected Soo Yan of arson and kidnapping. Seon Hui's father secretly called Hyeon Min. He knew the truth about Hyeon Min's actions and challenged him about his daughter's whereabouts. Hyeon Min arrogantly demanded that Seon Hui's father prepare a ransom for her release by noon the next day. He threatened that Seon Hui wouldn't survive if he didn't pay. After the call, Hyeon Min hummed a tune and walked to a market, eventually stopping at a shoe store. He casually picked out a pair of women's shoes. Meanwhile, Seon Hui awoke to find herself in a strange factory. The guard was fast asleep. Seizing the opportunity, she tried to escape, but Hyeon Min returned just in time. He hurled the pair of shoes he had purchased at Seon Hui, forcing her to change into them. Seon Hui's father texted Hyeon Min, requesting more time to gather the ransom. He asked for a little more time. Hyeon Min knew Seon Hui's father was deliberately trying to avoid rescuing his daughter. Seon Hui, worried about her best friend, constantly questioned Hyeon Min about Soo Yan's condition. He simply sneered and assured her that if she cooperated, he would ensure Soo Yan's safety. Then, Hyeon Min volunteered to reveal the truth. The first bombshell, Hyeon Min, was Seon Hui's biological father. However, to his surprise, Seon Hui's reaction wasn't shock, but a recognition. She had considered the possibility. From their first encounter, she had found Hyeon Min strangely familiar, bearing a striking resemblance to her father from her memories. His eating habits also mirrored her father's. Having revealed their father-daughter bond, Hyeon Min launched into his past. Years ago, Seon Hui's adoptive parents had killed their own son and then framed him for the crime. Fearing exposure, they adopted Seon Hui, using her as a hostage to silence him. After his release from prison, with the help of friends, Hyeon Min had tracked down Seon Hui. He was overjoyed to see her grown up, until he recognized her adoptive parents, the very couple who had falsely accused him. He described them as masters of disguise, pretending to be good people. In the days that followed, Hyeon Min explained he had been trying to rescue Seon Hui ever since the murder. He had secretly followed her when he saw her chase after Soo Yan. Everything seemed fine until Soo Yan's screams echoed from Kyung Ho's house. When Seon Hui rushed inside, Hyeon Min, fearing exposure, was forced to remain outside. Later that night, he saw Soo Yan leaving Kyung Ho's house, her clothes stained with blood, as she returned home. Worried, he watched from outside Seon Hui's house and noticed Seon Hui's mother going into Kyung Ho's house, then leaving again. He suspected she had gone there to hide a body. Fearing the worst, he stayed outside Kyung Ho's house, eventually discovering that Seon Hui's mother had returned there at dawn. He believed she had come back to finish cleaning up. And indeed, soon after she left, Young Ho's house caught fire. The next day, Hyun Min confronted Seon Hui's adoptive parents, revealing everything he had witnessed. They threatened him, claiming they had done what they did for Seon Hui's sake. At least now, they said, Seon Hui wouldn't go to jail. This meeting seemed to indicate that Seon Hui's adoptive parents were continuing to use her as a hostage. At that moment, Seon Hui's adoptive father overheard a conversation between Seon Hui and Soo Yan. He realized that Soo Yan was also plotting murder to silence witnesses. He ordered Hyun Min to deal with Soo Yan. Hyun Min refused. His adoptive father threatened him with the old accusation that he had murdered their son. He warned that if Hyun Min didn't cooperate, Seon Hui's life would be destroyed. Under threat from the couple, Hyun Min, desperate to protect his daughter, had no choice but to comply. In front of Seon Hui, her biological father shifted all the blame onto her adoptive parents, claiming they were solely responsible for the crimes. However, the adoptive parents' version of events contradicted his story entirely. After Seon Hui's house fire, Detective Lee had perished in the line of duty. At his funeral, Detective Shin was overcome with grief. Before the incident, Lee had given Shin a lighter as a gift. Now, looking at his fallen colleague's last present, Shin was consumed by both sorrow and a fierce determination to catch the culprit. Shin believed that Soo Yan was responsible for setting the fire and kidnapping Seon Hui. He suspected she had an accomplice. Just then, Seon Hui's parents approached Shin, offering a lead. They insisted that Soo Yan wasn't the culprit and that Seon Hui was safe for now. Under interrogation, Seon Hui's parents revealed the truth. It was Hyun Min, not Soo Yan, who had killed Detective Lee. They explained that over a decade ago, Hyun Min had murdered their son and been sentenced to 12 years in prison. Upon his release, he had shown no remorse and continued to use Seon Hui's life to threaten them. For a while, it seemed impossible to determine the truth. Was the story told by Seon Hui's parents and biological father accurate, or were they weaving a web of lies? He threatened to kill Seon Hui if they didn't listen to him. After getting out of prison, Hyun Min found Seon Hui's mother and discovered that the couple had adopted his daughter. Hyun Min bluntly told them that to them, Seon Hui was just the daughter of their enemy. To extort money, Hyun Min used his knowledge of their past as leverage, demanding they keep it a secret from Seon Hui. On the night of the murder, Hyun Min was watching Seon Hui's mother. When Seon Hui confessed to killing someone, Seon Hui's mother rushed to Young Ho's house to check on him. But Young Ho was already dead. Seeing this, Hyun Min pretended to be helpful, suggesting Seon Hui's mother go home and telling her he'd handle the scene. He demanded a fee in exchange for cleaning up the mess. Panic-stricken and desperate to protect her daughter from suspicion, Seon Hui's mother agreed and left. When she saw Young Ho's parents return home, Seon Hui's mother considered calling the police. But then she remembered Hyun Min's threat and ultimately didn't make the call. The next day, when news broke about the fire at Young Ho's house, Seon Hui's mother was shocked, just like Seon Hui. But to protect her daughter, she tried to stay composed in front of her. Soon after Soo Yan arrived, Hyun Min showed up as well. He admitted to setting the fire at Young Ho's house, but claimed he did it to protect Seon Hui. Seon Hui's adoptive father knew Hyun Min's intentions and wanted to call the police. However, Hyun Min threatened him, revealing he had dashcam footage of Seon Hui running out of Young Ho's house covered in blood. The footage also showed Seon Hui's adoptive mother entering and leaving the house. If the police saw this, Seon Hui would be the prime suspect in Young Ho's murder. Hyun Min also eavesdropped on a conversation between Seon Hui and Soo Yan. He realized that Soo Yan knew about the future murder ritual. This guy seemed to be planning on calling the police. While Seon Hui's adoptive father was freaking out, Hyun Min grabbed his keys, claiming he wanted to protect Seon Hui. He planned to use the adoptive father's car to deal with Soo Yan. The adoptive father demanded to know why Hyun Min had set the fire. But Hyun Min showed no remorse and told him to think about Seon Hui. He said if he didn't want Seon Hui to become a murderer and end up in jail like him, he should stay out of it. Hyun Min then got in the adoptive father's car and went after Soo Yan. The adoptive father, wanting to protect Seon Hui like his own daughter, reluctantly let Hyun Min go. The adoptive father was constantly being threatened and warned. Eventually, he decided to send Seon Hui overseas. However, the adoptive mother was still worried, fearing that Hyun Min would hurt Seon Hui eventually. She decided to act first. They knew that both Hyun Min and Seon Hui were allergic to peanuts. So to protect her daughter, she bought peanut butter and planned to use it against Hyun Min. Seon Hui overheard her adoptive parents' conversation and misunderstood. She thought they were planning to kill her. Seon Hui's adoptive mother explained everything to the police. She admitted that she and her husband had been driven nearly insane by Hyun Min. Officer Shin believed them and immediately sent an armed SWAT team to the building where Hyun Min was holding Seon Hui hostage. Hyun Min was getting impatient. He angrily called the adoptive mother, demanding to know when she would pay the ransom. Following the police's instructions, the adoptive mother stalled during the call. This kept Hyeon Min waiting in place. Not long after the call ended, the SWAT team located Hyeon Min and the hostage inside the building, but they couldn't get a clear shot because of an obstacle. The adoptive father asked to negotiate, saying that as a father, he had to save his daughter. Despite the risk, Officer Shin, also a father, understood his feelings and agreed. Inside the building, Hyeon Min reminded his biological daughter, Seon Hui, that her adoptive parents saw her as a plaything. He said they would discard her when she was no longer useful. Despite his doubts, Seon Hui still believed that her adoptive parents weren't the kind of people Hyeon Min described. The adoptive father entered the building. Hyeon Min saw him and pointed the gun at Seon Hui, demanding the ransom money. The adoptive father threw the bag, but Hyeon Min changed his mind. He declared that he didn't want money. He wanted revenge on the rich and the unjust world. As the adoptive father yelled, a bullet came flying from across the street. The SWAT team had opened fire. The biological father was injured. He frantically called out to his daughter. Seon Hui ran towards her adoptive father, but then stopped and turned back to her biological father. Seeing her father wounded and bleeding, Seon Hui felt heartbroken. To everyone's shock, Hyeon Min ruthlessly grabbed his daughter, who was now filled with pity for him, and held her hostage again. He dragged Seon Hui into a corner, still holding the gun. Seon Hui, crying, pressed on her father's wound. Looking at his daughter, who was full of resentment, Hyeon Min's heart softened. He remembered the sweet moments he had spent with her years ago. After his wife died, he and his daughter leaned on each other. Even though their lives were hard, he had learned to find joy in the midst of hardship with his daughter by his side. He would take her to amusement parks, and they'd eat simple but warm meals together. Those days spent together were full of happiness. Sadly, their happiness was short-lived. One day, Hyeon Min, desperate for money, left his little daughter with her grandmother, promising he'd make a lot of money and come back for her soon. But making money wasn't easy. Hyeon Min tried his luck gambling on horse races, but lost everything. That night, in despair, he came across a drunk man and, without hesitation, decided to rob him to get money. Unfortunately, he was caught. Hyeon Min had a criminal record, and this wasn't his first offense. The case went to the prosecutors. To avoid punishment, Hyeon Min tried to sweet-talk the prosecutor, making excuses for his actions. He noticed a family photo on the prosecutor's desk, and realized that he valued family. Hyeon Min took advantage of this, starting to cry and whine about his difficult circumstances, how he had to take care of his elderly mother and young daughter, hoping for the prosecutor's sympathy. Hyeon Min's sob story actually worked. The prosecutor decided to be lenient and handle the robbery case lightly. The twist? This prosecutor was Seon Hui's adoptive father. And even more coincidentally, Seon Hui's adoptive father and her biological father shared the same name. Hyeon Min smiled outwardly when he saw the prosecutor who shared his name, but inside he was seething with jealousy. Both of them were fathers, with the same name, but their fates were completely different. That night, Hyeon Min called his buddies and ambushed Seon Hui's adoptive father outside a bar where he was drinking. When he was drunk, Hyeon Min knocked him unconscious and took his ID. From then on, the adoptive father became Hyeon Min's financial resource, which sparked the entire chain of events. While remembering the past, Hyeon Min was suddenly tackled by Seon Hui's adoptive father, who grabbed the gun. The two men began wrestling fiercely, neither gaining the upper hand. Just when Hyeon Min was about to regain control of the gun, the adoptive father charged and tried to subdue him. Unexpectedly, they both fell into the sea. Seon Hui watched in despair as her two fathers plunged into the water. When the scene was cleared, the adoptive mother rushed into the building. She saw her daughter, who had been rescued, and, filled with worry, tried to comfort her. Nobody knows if the adoptive father survived, and no one knows what will happen next. Flashing back to that night, Hyeon Min stalked and injured the prosecutor, then stole his business card to use for identification. The next day, he deliberately took his daughter Seon Hui to the hospital, pretending to coincidentally run into the prosecutor's family who were there for a checkup. When he met Hyeon Min, who shared his name, the prosecutor was pleased and let his son take care of Seon Hui. During their conversation, Hyeon Min made an excuse to leave, actually heading to the supermarket to buy snacks that contained peanuts. He ended up giving the food to his daughter. Hyeon Min knew very well that his daughter, like him, had a severe peanut allergy. The prosecutor's son, unaware of this, helped Seon Hui open the package. Everything went exactly as Hyeon Min had planned. After eating the peanut-containing snacks, Seon Hui went into anaphylactic shock and passed out. Luckily, she was revived after being rushed to the emergency room. In front of the prosecutor, Hyeon Min once again played the poor, helpless card. He hinted that he couldn't afford the expensive medical bills. The kind-hearted prosecutor, hearing that Hyeon Min worked in insurance sales, bought a policy from him without hesitation. He even recommended Hyeon Min's insurance to his colleagues at the office, hoping that these deals could help Hyeon Min get back on his feet. Hyun Min feigned gratitude, shedding fake tears. He then went to the psychological practice run by the prosecutor's wife. The prosecutor's wife was an excellent psychologist. After the consultation, Hyun Min intentionally used a familiar tone to call the prosecutor's wife by her name, even giving her a romantic bouquet of flowers. The kind-hearted wife invited Hyun Min to dinner at their home. Almost everyone around them advised the prosecutor and his wife to stay away from Hyun Min, saying he was a known criminal. But Hyun Min's fake persona convinced the couple that he had reformed and was a pitiful man trying to turn his life around for his family. They had no idea that he was using the prosecutor's business card to scam people all over town. That evening, Hyun Min took his daughter to the prosecutor's house, as invited. In front of the prosecutor's family, Hyun Min continued his act, expressing remorse for not being able to take care of his daughter. Facing a seemingly sincere father, the prosecutor told Seon Hwai to consider this her home and to visit often. He even bought life insurance for his entire family from Hyun Min. However, not long after, Hyun Min's fake identity was exposed by his creditors. They threatened him, demanding payment. If he didn't pay up, he would be killed. To survive, Hyun Min had to become ruthless. That day, he took his daughter away from her grandmother. When she heard that her son had bought life insurance for Seon Hwai, Hyun Min's mother became worried that he was up to something sinister. Hyun Min's mother hoped he'd stop before it was too late, but he ignored her and took his daughter with him. He took Seon Hui to the beach. To get the insurance money, he planned to stage an accident with his daughter. On the beach, Seon Hui innocently looked out at the ocean, unaware of her father's sinister intentions. But she was so sweet and well-behaved that Hyun Min couldn't bring himself to do it. He decided to stop. Just then, Hyun Min's creditor called. He let Hyun Min know that he was watching him and even knew about his insurance scam. The creditor didn't care how Hyun Min got the money, but he reminded him that if he was going to carry out the plan at the beach, he should have a witness to avoid problems with the insurance company later. As luck would have it, the prosecutor's family was also at the beach nearby. Seeing this opportunity, Hyun Min hatched a new plan. He knew that no one would be a better witness than a current prosecutor. While the prosecutor's family was fishing on the rocks, Hyun Min secretly carried his daughter to another spot, planning to execute his scheme. Unfortunately, just as he was about to act, the prosecutor's son called out to Seon Hui. Seon Hui turned and looked at her father. Her innocent face made Hyun Min hesitate again. Now, Hyun Min was caught between two choices: pay his debt to survive or not kill his daughter to get the money. He was in a desperate situation and didn't know what to do. The prosecutor sensed Hyun Min's anxiety and encouraged him to share his troubles. He even asked Hyun Min about his childhood dreams. Hyun Min straightened up and confessed that he didn't have any dreams. If he had to say, his only dream was to survive. The prosecutor seemed to sympathize. He said that life wasn't easy. Since having his own son, his son's future was the only reason he kept going. So he hoped Hyun Min would also live for his daughter, Seon Hwai. Seeing the prosecutor's family happily playing on the beach, a warm feeling Hyun Min hadn't felt in a long time rose within him. But unable to kill his daughter to pay his debt, he was threatened by his creditor. To save his life, he agreed to get the money soon. Hyun Min, driven by greed, didn't give up on his plan to get the insurance money. He transferred all the premiums from the policies he sold into his own account. The prosecutor's colleagues discovered this and realized they had been scammed. The prosecutor apologized to his colleagues who had bought the insurance and hoped they'd give Hyun Min another chance. That day, Hyun Min scheduled a meeting with the prosecutor, saying he'd found a steady job and hoped his benefactor would visit his office when he had time. This time, Hyun Min wasn't lying. Motivated by the prosecutor's words about his daughter, he found a job at a paint shop and planned to pay his debts and live a peaceful life. Before the meeting, Hyun Min hired an electrician to fix the wiring in his office. The electrician told Hyun Min that the wiring was outdated and needed to be replaced entirely. He added that the office was full of paint and flammable materials, making it very dangerous. But Hyun Min accused the electrician of trying to extort money from him, cursed him out, and kicked him out. Later that day, the prosecutor visited Hyun Min's office. Hyun Min enthusiastically welcomed him and talked about his paint sales job, hinting that he was struggling financially and implying that the prosecutor could help. But the prosecutor's face turned serious as he brought up the insurance scam. After being exposed, Hyun Min repeatedly apologized. However, the prosecutor was now disappointed in Hyun Min. He had thought that with enough support, Hyun Min would surely turn over a new leaf, believing that he wasn't inherently bad. But now, the prosecutor demanded that Hyun Min repay the money as soon as possible, or he would have to go public with the matter and prosecute Hyun Min for fraud. That night, when he returned home, the prosecutor was disheartened. He confided in his wife that he was wrong to trust Hyun Min. He wanted to continue believing in the man, but he was starting to distance himself. Meanwhile, Hyun Min was captured by his creditor, who continued to threaten him. On the brink of death, Hyun Min was forced to promise that he had a way to get the money. and his creditor gave him a 3-day deadline. If Hyun Min didn't pay within 3 days, he would have to pay with his life. With his life in danger, the prosecutor was no longer willing to help, leaving Hyun Min with no hope left. Looking at his sleeping daughter, Hyun Min's eyes welled up with desperate tears. He decided to drive, taking Seon Hui to the prosecutor's son's school. After picking up the boy, Hyun Min asked for a small favor, then took both the boy and Seon Hui to his paint shop. The prosecutor's son played with Seon Hui, while Hyun Min brought out 2 glasses of water. The boy thanked him, unaware that today would be his last day. Sang-ho, completely trusting the man who was a close friend of his parents, gulped down the drink without a second thought. Before he knew it, he was out cold. Adoptive mom, unable to reach him, frantically called her husband, a prosecutor. But he just assumed Sang-ho was hanging out with friends and brushed it off. Little did he know, a criminal just got caught and spilled the beans about Hyun Min, who was pretending to be a prosecutor. This revelation was the final straw for adoptive dad. He couldn't forgive Hyun Min anymore and promptly called the cops, arresting him for impersonation. Sang-ho's real dad led the cops to the paint store, but they didn't find anything. He returned to the prosecutor's office, clueless that his precious son was unconscious somewhere in that very store. Hyun Min, despite being caught, cracked a wicked grin. When asked why he impersonated his adoptive father, he coldly revealed Sang-ho's kidnapping. Adoptive father was furious. He pummeled Hyun Min, trying to force information out of him, but the guy just wouldn't budge. The police eventually discovered Hyun Min's phone last pinged at the paint store. Adoptive dad remembered something. A few days ago, when he visited the store, he noticed an empty space behind the warehouse, where there should have been a cabinet. A chilling realization hit him. That was where they were hiding Sang-ho. He rushed to the scene. Meanwhile, Sang-ho woke up, saw Seon Hui still unconscious, and fumbled to turn on the warehouse lights. But the wires shorted, sparking a fire. Seeing the black smoke billowing, he desperately pushed the cabinet blocking the warehouse door. But the flames were already engulfing the place, making it impossible to escape through the main entrance. In a moment of desperation, Sang-ho smashed a window high up and carried the now conscious Seon Hui out. He then tried to escape the blazing inferno, but it was too late. The paint store exploded, swallowing Sang-ho whole. When his parents arrived, it was too late. The store was engulfed in flames. All they saw was a firefighter carrying a survivor out. As the person got closer, they realized it wasn't their son, but Seon Hui. Sang-ho's adoptive mother collapsed in despair, while his father's eyes lost their last flicker of hope. Time passed, and the fire slowly faded from the headlines, but the whispers lingered. Some people started doubting adoptive dad, questioning if he used his power as a prosecutor for personal revenge. Hyun Min, even though caught, refused to confess to the kidnapping. To add fuel to the fire, it was revealed that his parents had purchased a large life insurance policy for Sang-ho shortly before the incident, making people even more suspicious about their involvement in his death. Seon Hui, a young girl with nowhere to go, was sent to an orphanage after Hyun Min's arrest. Sang-ho's adoptive mom visited her often, and each time, she couldn't help but reminisce about her son's precious memories. One day at the orphanage, she met Soo-yeon, a bright and understanding girl. Seeing Seon Hui's loneliness, she asked Soo-yeon to be her friend. This simple request blossomed into a lifelong bond between the two girls. Not long after, Sang-ho's parents decided to adopt Seon Hui. For them, she wasn't the daughter of their enemy, but the girl their son had saved in his final moments. That day, the adoptive mom embraced Seon Hui with warmth and hope, wanting to mend her broken heart and finally create the perfect family. But, once again, Hyun Min shattered that dream. After the kidnapping ordeal, adoptive mom and Seon Hui embraced, tears streaming down their faces. To the mom, Seon Hui was still her most precious child. At the kidnapping site, the police discovered Soo-yeon unconscious and injured. Thankfully, adoptive dad survived thanks to a life preserver thrown by the police. In the days that followed, Seon Hui tried to push aside her grief and visited her friend Hyun Yu. He had been seriously injured by Soo-yeon, but was now recovering. Seeing Seon Hui safe and sound, Hyun Yu was ecstatic and took her to the mall for a shopping spree. Seon Hui wanted to cook a special meal for her adoptive parents to show her gratitude. On their way back, with groceries in hand, Hyun Yu confided in Seon Hui about his dreams. He wanted to be an architect, build a beautiful house for her, and, if he was lucky, maybe even live with her. Seon Hui understood his feelings but couldn't respond, only thanking him for his kindness. Throughout this whole ordeal, Hyun Yu had bravely risked everything to help her, and she held that memory close to her heart. Seon Hui's voice trembled with sadness as she spoke. Before Hyun Yu could ask another question, she hurriedly said goodbye and returned to the charred remains of the house. In the wreckage, she meticulously cleaned, her heart aching as she looked at the family photo, damaged by fire. After a long day, she finally restored the house to its former glory. Seon Hui went into the kitchen and cooked a meal, placing a birthday cake on the table with the inscription "Happy Birthday Sang-ho." She confessed to her adoptive parents that she remembered everything, how Sang-ho saved her, and how today was his birthday. Tears welled up in her eyes as she apologized, saying that if she hadn't been there, maybe their son would still be alive. Her adoptive father explained that he had hidden the truth to protect her, while her adoptive mother, as gentle as ever, held her hand and assured her that their family bond would heal after the storm. Seon-hui nodded, then poured seaweed soup for her parents. They praised its taste, but Seon-hui remained sad, whispering apologies. Hyun-yu, worried, called the police. As he suspected, her adoptive parents collapsed after consuming the soup. Suddenly, Hyun-min emerged from the shadows. It was him who had given Seon-hui the poisoned soup. The night before, Seon-hui was walking down the street when she got a call from her biological father, Hyun-min. He had survived a terrible accident at sea, and he was desperate to see her again. Hyun-min believed Seon-hui wouldn't be able to stay with her adoptive parents once she knew the truth about her past. He wanted her to come back to him, but he needed her help first. He asked her to slip something into her adoptive parents' soup, something that would knock them out. Seon-hui did what he asked, and soon her parents were unconscious. Hyun-min was overjoyed. He said that to start a new life together, they needed money. He pointed to the study where there was a safe. Seon-hui told him the code, her birthday. Hyun-min went to the study and entered a series of numbers, but the safe didn't open. It turned out he had forgotten his daughter's birthday. He tried another set of numbers, but still the safe remained locked. He kept trying different dates, but nothing worked. It was crazy as a father. He couldn't even remember his daughter's birthday, the most important number in his life. He was starting to panic and gulped down a large drink of alcohol. But then he remembered. He remembered the day she was born. The sun was shining brightly, and the weather was hot. He had rushed to the hospital and felt so much joy when he saw her. He thought everything was going to be new and fresh. The date of her birth was right there on her crib at the hospital. As he shared this memory, he almost cried. He was so close to having everything he wanted. All he needed was money. He believed he could be a good father, even if he was late to the game. As Hyun-min gleefully counted the money, a sudden wave of discomfort swept over him. Seon-hui had slipped something into his drink earlier. He tried to crawl out of the study, but as he saw his biological father writhing in pain, Seon-hui walked over to the dining table. She poured herself a glass of drugged wine, her eyes filled with regret, and started to drink. Just then, a hand reached out and stopped her. It was her adoptive mother. She wouldn't let Seon-hui do anything foolish and gently promised to protect her. Her adoptive father, too, wrapped his arms around his beloved daughter. The scene of them hugging was a picture of happiness. Sadly, it was just Seon-hui's imagination. Soon after, thanks to a tip from Hyun-yu, Officer Shin and his team arrived at Seon-hui's house. But they found only her biological father, her adoptive parents, and Seon-hui, all unconscious. Word spread that Seon-hui had gone abroad, but no one could contact her. Time passed quickly, and 3 years later, Hyun-yu became an architecture student. He dreamed of designing houses that would bring happiness to those who lived in them. One day, he visited Seon-hui's house, which had been renovated after a fire. Her adoptive parents were doing well, but Hyun-yu could sense a hidden emptiness and loneliness in their hearts without their daughter. He sent an email to Seon-hui, telling her about his life and his parents, and how much he missed her. Winter arrived, and as Hyun-yu gazed out at the snow, he was flooded with happy memories of playing with Seon-hui. Every time he walked down familiar streets, he caught glimpses of his best friend in his imagination. Not long after, Soo-yeon was released from prison. Hyun-yu and his sister, who lived with Soo-yeon at the welfare institution, went to pick her up. Hyun-yu had forgiven Soo-yeon for stabbing him, especially after what happened to Seon-hui. On a snowy day, they sat across from each other, sharing their past. Like Hyun-yu, Soo-yeon's mother had always protected her. Through Seon-hui's protection, Soo-yeon had experienced a warmth of family that she had never known before. To Soo-yeon, Seon-hui was not just a friend, but family. That's why she decided to transfer to Seon-hui's school. But events had stopped her from confessing her feelings for Seon-hui. Hyun-yu comforted Soo-yeon, saying that when Seon-hui returned, she could tell her how she felt. Meanwhile, Seon-hui's disappearance left her adoptive parents feeling empty and lonely. Her mother still bought extra groceries, enough for 3. When cooking, she would lose focus, her mind wandering. The house felt quiet. They would often reminisce about Seon-hui. Suddenly, her mother saw a figure standing outside, like a ghost. Her father put down his glass of water and rushed out. Not far from their home, they saw Seon-hui, about to leave. Hearing her father's call, she turned around, her eyes filled with tears. He said gently, "Come home, my daughter." Her mother prepared a warm meal to welcome her home. Seon-hui apologized to her parents. After the incident with the drugged wine, she felt ashamed and thought she should disappear. But she couldn't control her longing for them, so she decided to see them one last time before vanishing. The truth was, Xianhui had been watching everything, Hyun Yu and Su Yan talking, her parents shopping for groceries. Sometimes she imagined being by their side. They reassured her that she was their daughter, their everything. He was terrified of losing his daughter and his family breaking apart. But it wasn't until all those terrible things happened that he realized he should have paid more attention to his daughter's feelings. Seeing her parents' genuine love for her, Xianhui almost burst into tears. In the warm embrace of their home, her mother took Xianhui's hand, and the three of them held each other tight. After all they had been through, they were finally a complete family. That evening, Xianhui wrote a letter to her grandmother, inviting her to visit and take a family picture with them. When she received the letter, her grandmother was touched. Despite being cruel to Xianhui, she still considered her to be family. Soon, the day of the family photoshoot arrived, and Xianhui finally got to see her grandmother again. Her grandmother had let go of her stubbornness and accepted Xianhui as her own. Xianhui carefully helped her into the photography studio. Seeing his mother there brought tears to Xianhui's father's eyes. He had been estranged from her for years since the loss of their son. Her grandmother apologized to her daughter-in-law, acknowledging that she didn't understand her grief. But as the camera clicked, Xianhui, her parents, and her grandmother took a beautiful family portrait together. In the days that followed, Xianhui's presence filled the house with warmth. Her parents weren't lonely anymore, and she had found the greatest love in the world. That's the end of the story. Don't forget to subscribe and support our channel for more amazing films. Thank you. One last time before vanishing. The truth was, Xianhui had been watching everything, Hyun Yu and Su Yan talking, her parents shopping for groceries. Sometimes she imagined being by their side. They reassured her that she was their daughter, their everything. He was terrified of losing his daughter and his family breaking apart. But it wasn't until all those terrible things happened that he realized he should have paid more attention to his daughter's feelings. Seeing her parents' genuine love for her, Xianhui almost burst into tears. In the warm embrace of their home, her mother took Xianhui's hand, and the three of them held each other tight. After all they had been through, they were finally a complete family. That evening, Xianhui wrote a letter to her grandmother, inviting her to visit and take a family picture with them. When she received the letter, her grandmother was touched. Despite being cruel to Xianhui, she still considered her to be family. Soon, the day of the family photoshoot arrived, and Xianhui finally got to see her grandmother again. Her grandmother had let go of her stubbornness and accepted Xianhui as her own. Xianhui carefully helped her into the photography studio. Seeing his mother there brought tears to Xianhui's father's eyes. He had been estranged from her for years since the loss of their son. Her grandmother apologized to her daughter-in-law, acknowledging that she didn't understand her grief. But as the camera clicked, Xianhui, her parents, and her grandmother took a beautiful family portrait together. In the days that followed, Xianhui's presence filled the house with warmth. Her parents weren't lonely anymore, and she had found the greatest love in the world. That's the end of the story. Don't forget to subscribe and support our channel for more amazing films. Thank you.